Webcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, April 29th. I'm Donna Will, Professional Development Coordinator for the Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the Maryland Community of Practice for Supporting Families webinar series. This is webinar number 1, Connecting with Family Members During COVID-19. This session is being facilitated by Kane-Breschi, Director of Family Supports for DDA. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are 2 options for listening to the webinar, by computer and by phone, and if you have trouble hearing, you can try switching. There is a handout for this webinar, which you can find in the handout section on the right side, and they can be emailed if you are listening by phone. We are also recording the webinar, and we'd like to hear from you and get your feedback on today's presentation, along with any suggestions you might have for future topics. Please use the question or chat box to the right of your panel to provide it. In addition, we're interested in highlighting how people with disabilities and their families are connecting during this pandemic through this webinar series. If you're interested in sharing your story, please contact Kane-Breschi directly at mary.kane-breschi@maryland.gov or me, donna.will@maryland.gov. If you have any questions related to your family member services, please contact your local regional office. And now I'd like to introduce Kane-Breschi, who you probably can see on their screen. Hi, Marianne.
Hello. Hello. Thank you, Donna. Hello and welcome, everyone. On behalf of the Maryland Developmental Disability Administration and the Maryland Community of Practice for Supporting Families, we welcome you. We hope you and your family are well. DDA is excited to host the Maryland Community of Practice for Supporting Families webinar series in an effort to support all people with developmental disabilities as well as their families, particularly during this time. Throughout the series, families will hear from subject matter experts on a variety of topics, such as listening to trauma of COVID-19, behavioral supports, where, when, how to get them, transition, and virtual person-centered planning, to name a few. Our goal is, through this series, to bring families and others together. We want, connection is so important, and we want folks to connect, hear and learn from one another so we all might be stronger. We want to hear about your challenges. We know they weigh heavy on your hearts and on your minds. What are you doing? We also want to hear about what you're doing. What strategies are you employing, or solutions have you found or developed to address any of these challenges? Can you share them so we might all learn and help one another? Finally, have there been any gems along the way that you've discovered that have made life easier for you, more meaningful, and or offered you hope? I've had a couple, and I'm looking forward to sharing at least one with you later on in the presentation. Excuse me. A little bit about me. My husband and I are the parents of 4 adult children. We have 3 sons and a daughter, along with a beautiful daughter-in-law and just the most adorable grandson. Maggie, our daughter, who is our youngest, has multiple disabilities and has given me permission to share her story with you today. In fact, they all have, because it truly is a collective story. But I would say that Maggie's probably the most courageous in allowing me to share with you a bit about her life. And so thank you to Mike, the boys, the girls, and Mags. I'm eternally grateful. I've worked in the disability field for over 20 years. Like so many of you, self-advocates, siblings, and parents, I came into the field in hopes of learning all that I could in order to support my daughter and our family. It didn't take long before I realized that I could take this knowledge, hopefully I could take this knowledge and use it to support others. And hopefully I've done that over the last 20 years. And now here I am. I am very fortunate to be with DDA as their Director of Family Supports, and just so honored to be able to host and facilitate this webinar series for you. Before we move forward, I'd like to remember those people who have lost their lives due to COVID-19, and those people being people with developmental disabilities, direct support professionals, and others. Our thoughts and prayers go out to them and their families. The loss of life during this time has definitely been the most significant loss we could experience and our greatest challenge. But that said, the loss of life is not the only challenge that with which we've been faced. Sheltering in place has wreaked havoc on our lives, turning them upside down. And as a result, life has become more difficult than perhaps what it had already been. And it's also a more frightening time for all of us. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities have lost their routine, their ability to work and engage in meaningful day. They miss their friends and others that they're accustomed to seeing and spending time with. They too are scared, frightened, and feel the stress around them. For families caring for children and adults with developmental disabilities, their lives have changed too. All of a sudden, they find themselves willingly but responsible for creating a day for their family member, identifying and participating in activities in order for them to experience meaning during the day and to enjoy their day. In addition, for their children who are out of school, they find now that they have to be the special ed teacher or the OT or the PT. And in some cases, they really are having to mitigate and navigate very difficult and challenging behaviors on the part of their loved one with developmental disabilities. And again, they do this willingly, but they're doing it without support. And they do this while trying to work, attending other family members, managing their own health and fears, and trying to keep a household together. So it's quite difficult, right? And then there are families who are restricted from seeing their loved one who might be living in the community, supported by a provider agency, and that's where our family falls. And while our challenges may not be the same, they're challenges nonetheless. And they consist of things like, well, first and foremost, I'm restricted from seeing my daughter. I get it, but I miss her. I'm worried. And as many of you are as well, the thoughts are, is she okay? Are they okay? Is she getting what she needs? Does she miss me? Does she feel abandoned? I mean, I know, it's true. It's things we think about. And so for us, the question is, how can we remain connected to one another? On another level, in a very, very real sense, we're concerned about her health. What if she gets sick? Can I see her? Can I be with her? How can I, if she was to become sick, what does that look like? And then finally, about staff. We know that staff are they're our front line. They are working day and night. They're working longer hours to keep our family members safe. How can we support them? These are all very difficult questions for a very difficult time. And as I said earlier, they weigh heavy on our hearts and minds. We really are truly faced with new obstacles with which we need to address. And while one day we all have hope that this will be over, and it will, but what about now? What is your hope for today? How are you getting through today? And it is my hope, our hope, DDA, the Maryland Community of Practice, that through connection, sharing and learning from one another and supporting each other, we may just find solutions to not only improve our lives now, but actually will take us forward into our lives. So throughout this series, we are going to my slide deck is not moving. Donna, excuse me, a little technical difficulty here.
So it's not moving? Do you want me to put mine up?
Sure, if you can.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologize, everyone. It was working beautifully earlier.
As it always does.
And I'm not certain why it isn't now. Just bear with us for one moment, please.
Give me a second.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do, so I'm going to continue to talk. Throughout this series, I am going to address some of these challenges through the lens of charting the life course framework. For those of you who aren't familiar with charting the life course, it is a set of universal principles and tools which were developed by the University of Missouri, Kansas City, the Institute for Human Development Family to Family program. These tools were initially developed for people with developmental disabilities and their families to create a vision for a good life, think about what they need to know and do, navigate and or develop the supports and resources that they need, and finally to discover what it is, what it will take to live the lives of their choosing and to do it. These principles and tools can be used by anyone, not just people with developmental disabilities and their families, but organizations and state systems as well. In fact, they inform the work of the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families, of which Maryland is a part, as well as the Maryland Community of Practice, and the work of the Developmental Disability Administration. My hope, while today you will be introduced to them, and we're not going to go through all of them, but throughout this introduction, you're going to come to learn about them, and you'll find them helpful, and you'll be able to utilize them in your own life. For more information, you can go to lifecoursetools.com. That's the website, but also included in our handout section, we have a couple of handouts describing what these principles are. Donna?
Yes.
Can you fill the screen? I'm only seeing a part. All right, can you move to the next slide, please?
Yeah. So we're using a PDF, so that's
the problem. If you use the actual PowerPoint, then you can put it up there. If you use the PDF, she's going to have to push it through. So can you upload the actual PDF to this?
Yeah, or if you all could bear with me, I could upload mine once more and see if that would work.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to minimize that. Okay, I'm going to come back here. Okay. Okay.
Did you find it?
Donna? Yeah, I have it. Can you give me permission to share my screen
Yep.
again?
You should get the...
I've got it, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And minimize. Okay. All righty. Let's go back. Again, it's not working. My apologies. I don't know why it's not working well in this mode.
Is there, like, if you click on the picture and scroll it, there you go. It changed. It's changing.
Okay, terrific. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. So in this first webinar, I'm going to introduce you to the integrated STAR to address the issue around remaining connected and with our family members from which we're restricted from seeing, as well as building memories. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about Maggie. Actually, I apologize. I want to tell you a little bit first more about the principle. My apologies. So the integrated STAR, as a principle, recognizes that all of us, disability or not, we utilize a variety of supports and resources throughout our lives to get through our day, our weeks, our months, and years, right? And we need these supports in order to do this. And the same is true for people with disabilities and their families. And what we know is that when people with disabilities and their families use a combination of many different kinds of supports, not just eligibility-specific supports, a little green area on the lower right-hand corner, that their trajectory towards their goal, building a good life, is often positive, as opposed to when they don't. If the focus, and historically that's what's happened in this industry, in our world, is that there's been such an emphasis on eligibility specific supports. And when we only focus on that, often the trajectory becomes a negative trajectory and we don't get what we want. So as a tool, the Integrated STAR really helps us to think about the resources we have and what we don't have, but also how we might develop and work in partnership with one another to achieve our goal, whether it's the big picture, the big good life, or a very specific goal, as in this case, remaining connected and building memories with our family members. Before we get into this and how we used it, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Mags. Here she is. She is mine and my husband's youngest. Mags is a bright, beautiful young woman who happens to have multiple disabilities and complex medical needs. She has cerebral palsy and is unable to walk or talk. She uses a wheelchair, uses signs, gestures, vocalizations, and an iPad to communicate, and receives all of her nutrition through a G-tube, and requires, but I need to add, but gracefully receives complete care. She is one of the most patient, trusting, forgiving, and loving people I know. And in spite of these challenges related to her disability, together with family, a lot of planning, learning from lots of mistakes over the years, and now with the support she has in place, she is living a good life. It's not perfect, but it is one that she loves and cares deeply about. So let me tell you about it. She shares a condominium with a very dear friend and is supported by an incredible staff through a local provider agency. She dates. She is currently working and working to, and once we can get out of sheltering in place, growing an organic farm with the hope of being able to with the hope of selling her produce at a local farmer's market. And believe it or not, she has completed a marathon and triathlons, all through the help of the athletes serving athletes. Most importantly, though, Mags loves her family and her friends and is loved. Oh, I forgot one thing. She loves family vacations. All of this is to say that we are close, as many of you are. And we're very much a part of each other's lives and a part of the quality of our lives. So normally we see Mags 1 to 3 times a week and we speak to her daily. But now with the restrictions of COVID-19, we can't see her. We haven't seen her in over 6 weeks, and it's been tough. You know, we feel disconnected. We're worried, not so much worried about her care. They've done an amazing job, but initially we were worried, right? And we're missing her and what to do about it. From day one, our question has been, how can we remain and continue to connect with Mags for her and our sake? How can we support her staff during this time as well? You know, it's not just the case that this is tough for us. Again, this is tough for Mags. She's no longer engaged in activities that she's accustomed to, and she misses her friends, staff, and her daily routine. So another question becomes not just connecting, but how do we support her through this? And then what about her residential staff? They aren't accustomed to providing 24/7 care, and now they're doing so, and they're doing an amazing job. But how can we support them? So the Integrated STAR. I'm so glad this is working because this is fun. So the first thing, so when we use the Integrated STAR, the first thing we need to identify is our goal. And I also need to throw out there that, and I challenge all of you to use it, that there is not a question, a challenge, or that this STAR can't address. So give it a try one day. So in our case, we want to remain connected and build memories with Mags. So the first area that we focus on is our strengths and assets. And normally when you're working with just a person, you would want to focus on their strengths and assets. But because this includes the entire family, we're looking at the strengths and assets of our family. So I'm going to read what I think our strengths and assets are. And my sense is that these are your strengths and assets too. But we are patient, we're strong, we're kind, and we have a pretty good sense of humor. We're creative, we're intelligent, and we're resourceful. Now, this is not my skill, but we have some pretty tech-savvy folks in the family and with lots of knowledge around virtual platforms, and they have skills which enable us to utilize those things. The second thing, and so when we're doing this, we're trying to answer the question, and we're trying to look at the resources we have that we can bring to solve whatever challenges before us. Next, we want to look at and consider relationships. And for us, we have family. Not everyone does, but we do. And we have a large family, a very loving family for which we are so grateful. And we have friends, and I can't say it enough. Maggie's support staff are just phenomenal. We have neighbors and others. So these are all important, will play a role in how we get to remaining connected. Then we want to consider technology. Technology is our best friend. I mentioned earlier that Maggie uses an iPad to communicate, which is just so important. But in addition to her iPad, the phone or iPhone, the laptop, again, these virtual platforms, Portal, Facebook, Messenger, Zoom, and the ability to download books, and I'll get into that a little bit later. All of this will play a part in us remaining connected. And then when we consider our community resources, and these are resources that are available to everyone, and you don't have to meet any kind of criteria, you don't have to have a disability, but anyone can access these. And actually the technology, you could make the case fit into this as well, but social media, online learning, crafting, virtual exercise classes, virtual tours, and YouTube, all of these things are part of our solution. And finally, are the eligibility specific supports. These are critical. They're critical. Maggie's receives services through the Developmental Disability Administration and the residential supports and her staff. We could not do this without her staff. So when we look at all of this, we bring all of this together, what have we done? Well, the first thing that's already popped up is the first thing that we needed to do was to talk with Mags, discussions about what this is going to look like. We needed to talk with staff and really about the opportunity to at least talk more frequently and how might they be able to support Maggie to do so. Maggie understands, she's bright, but the communication piece sometimes can be challenging. So she requires support in order to do that. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, I mentioned earlier that already we have regular phone conversations, but we want to continue those. And in addition to that, we really want to utilize FaceTime. We don't do this on a daily basis. Initially we did, but now it's probably every other day or maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and again, really needing the support of staff to make that happen for Mags. The other thing that we've done, which was really important for us as a family, so there's this connection between myself and Maggie and my husband and Maggie on a daily basis, but she's not necessarily communicating with her brothers on a daily basis. They're not communicating with me on a daily basis. But that's okay. Everyone does want to be together and communicate and connect, so how do we do that? So we schedule on Sundays a family virtual call. Now we utilize Portal, which for us has worked out beautifully, and it really does provide us with that opportunity to be together, to see one another and connect. And then finally, the other thing that we've done, and this is something that Mags and I are doing, and it's scheduling a virtual fun date. And this really, to me, goes towards not just connecting, but building memories, right? As well as the family, all of that's all very important too. But what we do is using FaceTime, particularly if the weather's nice. Mags will sit on her porch, I sit on our porch. We listen to an audible book together. And she's listening, I might be knitting, but all the while we might be talking. And we're spending the day together, or part of the day together, and which just means so much to me. And I think it does mean much to Mags as well. So all of this all of this has really made it possible for us not only to get through the day or barely connect, but I can honestly say that we are thriving in some ways around this. And it wasn't something that I thought we would necessarily do. Here is a picture of one of our family FaceTimes. As you can see, we've got a lively bunch here. And it's just such a great opportunity for us to come together, and again, most importantly, to connect with one another. My question for you is, so what about you? How are you connecting, and what are you doing to build memories, and what are you doing to assuage some of your fears even, and would you be willing to share them with us? We'd love to hear from you. And for those of you who are interested in sharing your stories, one of the handouts that is a part of this presentation is the integrated STAR. You can download it, you can complete it. We'd love for you to send in your pictures, send in a brief description. We'd love to be able to share your stories throughout this webinar series. It's just so important for us to hear from one another, to see what one another is doing to get through this time. It really does make us stronger. Here are some additional resources for you to remain connected regarding technology. There are, and community-based, there are all kinds of virtual activities for you to do, as well as we identify some of the eligibility specific resources. This is in no way a comprehensive list of resources, but a few to get you started, and I hope you'll find them helpful. Before I bring this webinar to a close, I want to thank you for joining us, but I would also like to thank Deputy Secretary Bernie Simons for this opportunity, Patricia Sestoki, our Director of Programs, for her support in making this possible. If any of you know Patricia, she makes all things possible. I also would like to thank Janet Furman, Director of Children's Programs, Erin Levitin, Katie Nichols, as well as Janice Tippett. And I hope you'll join us for our next webinar on May 13th, Lessening the Trauma of COVID-19. Dr. Karen Harvey will be with us. She's a dynamic, wonderful speaker, and I hope you'll join us. And in the meantime, be well. Thank you and have a great day.